Hello there, John Coturillo here, the counsellor of your listener. Thank you for joining us for this episode. As usual, thank you to everybody who makes this work possible. And also, as usual, if you have concerns about yourself or somebody else, please do not take what you find on the internet or in the media as advice. Seek advice from a professional or somebody else that you trust. If you are in Australia and are seeking counselling from me, you can find my details in the description of this episode. And in this episode, it is my pleasure to welcome my guest, Christian Kenny, broadcasting to us from North America. Christian, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Christian, tell us about yourself and what you do.
Well, my name is Christian Kenny. I'm the owner of Courage Over Comfort Corp. What we do is just about any kind of form of media or art that may be games, board games, video games, websites. There's really not about anything that we don't do. It's just about whether we want to do it. And the name of our company is Courage Over Comfort because the projects that we do are tackling hard social issues or things that I think would make the world a better place, or teach a lesson, or help people in some way or form.
Wonderful. So for anyone who wants to find Christian's work and Courage Over Comfort, you'll find links in the description of this episode. There is so much to be learned from that philosophy, and I'm very excited to be talking about it with you. Christian, something important that you told me before we started recording that I'd like to open with is that you came to this point in your life from skepticism. Can you tell us about that journey and what brought you here?
Sure. So there's like a little motto or mantra that I've come to develop, and on first hearing of it, you might kind of think like, what the heck is this guy talking about? But I wake up every morning and I try to prove myself wrong. And people are like, well, why would you want to prove yourself wrong? Well, because if I'm always challenging every single aspect of every idea, whether it be morals or what I think is a fact and what I think is a fiction, it's always going to keep my mind in an open space. It's very easy to say like, hey, this is this and that's it. And then you get new information, and that information might be really good information, but because you've boxed yourself in and you're not open to hearing other things, you've basically put yourself in a bubble, and you're going to be stuck believing the same thing forever, and that might not serve you, right? Especially if it's maybe incorrect information, or there's a better way of doing something, or there's better information that could lead through an idea or a way of life or a change of life that could benefit you in some way. I strongly believe that there's no benefit to putting yourself in a bubble, right? We want to grow as human beings, right? Whether that be in the mind, the body, the soul, whatever it is, we want to grow. And in order to grow, we have to always have an open mind. So, I mean, that's what I do. Every morning I wake up, and no matter what it is that I believe in, I challenge that idea. And a lot of my work that I do now, I got here because I challenged ideas. We produce tarot decks, as we discussed earlier, and I went into using tarot as a complete skeptic. I had the complete wrong idea about what it was. I thought it was like this magical, mystical thing. I thought it was this spiritual thing. I didn't think it worked. I thought it was a scam. Come to find out, it's a real thing. It's based in actual science, actual physics, actual astrology, and it has nothing to do with spirituality, and it has nothing to do with magic.
I think you worded that philosophy perfectly, and it's something that I'm constantly discussing in my own work and encouraging other people to explore, that it is quite a natural response to the world for us to always seek information which confirms our existing beliefs, or to remain within our domain of comfort when it comes to accepting ideas. It's a natural response because from an evolutionary basis, we have to protect ourselves, and familiarity is a form of safety. If we know what is familiar, we know that we can rely on it and predict how it's going to operate. So there's a form of safety in knowing how something is going to work or how something's going to happen. So it's our minds trying to protect us, but at the same time, we can make implicit mistakes, and it's important to be in control of the situation, not so that you're being indiscriminate, but so that you know when you might be biased and when you know when you might need to absorb new information. So trying to prove yourself wrong is an excellent philosophy. Now, Tarot was the practice that you initially discussed when you approached me, and I'm fascinated to discuss how it works. So could you tell our audience, for those who may not be familiar, how does tarot actually work, and what's the unique style of tarot that you introduced into the market?
In the simplest terms, tarot, just like pretty much everything, is math. It's all numbers, right? People think of tarot as something separate, but astrology is tarot, numerology is tarot, math is tarot. Tarot is just a piece of paper that's been illustrated with a certain amount of symbolism and calculations that are on the card. And that could be a difficult concept to understand because there is a lot of quote unquote tarot decks or tarot information that is out in the world that is extremely incorrect according to the traditional systems of the equations and the math that needs to be done in order to do it, right? I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with those types of creations because I have quite a large collection, and if I like the art that you made, I'll buy it because I like to collect it. But that deck in particular wouldn't be able to be used properly because the mathematical equations and the symbolism is not there, right? There's another thing that people like to believe is that, you know, the tarot has the energy and this is the fortune telling and it tells the future. It does none of those things. It does not tell the future. The tarot is basically, it's like the key to your car. Without the key to your car, you can't turn it on. Without you, you can't drive it. It's the same exact principle. It's just a tool. And everything in astrology and everything in numerology is in tarot and vice versa. Tarot is just an easier, digestible form of learning these educational tools, whereas astrology and numerology might be a little bit more difficult than tarot. Tarot is the easier because a lot of us are visual learners and we like pictures, and especially now, you know, we will like, you know, social media and everything. We like to see things, right? For somebody who maybe is using tarot for a very, very, very long time, eventually you understand these things, and it comes to the point where you don't actually need the tool because it almost becomes like second nature. Almost like you ever drive home from work and you kind of black out a bit and you're like, oh, well, how the heck did I drive home? Because I don't remember driving home, but you drove home safely. You know, it's just that it's like a second nature type of a thing. Every project we do kind of tackles a social issue, right? And one of the most recent projects that we did was tackling the issue of true crime and glorification of serial killers in media, all media outlets, right? You have the number one TV shows, the number one podcasts in the world, all based on these serial killers. And, you know, the popularity is something that interested me. The topic itself doesn't interest me because I understand how these people could do the things that they did, and I understand how these things exist in the world. And I think a lot of people are interested in this stuff because they want to know the who, what, where, and why, and they also don't understand those factors. One of the other big parts that we can't deny is shock value. People love shock value. You know, I seen a podcast that sold out a football stadium talking just about serial killers and true crime, and I was blown away. I was like, I can't believe how many people are truly, truly interested in this. So with tarot kind of forces us to ask difficult questions. And it's funny enough, you know, a lot of the popularity around this tarot deck has to do with a lot of quarrels and people who will say, oh, this is glorification of serial killers, this is this, and the third, when in reality it's actually the complete opposite. And that doesn't get me mad because that tells me that it's doing the exact job that it's supposed to do. It's challenging all of these people to kind of stop for a second, think about things, and figure it out. You know, we've raised thousands of dollars for victims across the country in the United States. A lot of the organizations that we work with are specifically for either parents or children that were had murder victims in the family, or help these people get therapy and psychology and college tuition and stuff like that. We definitely did a really good job at hitting the mark of what we wanted to do. The only caveat to that, and even with our second project too, I see this being an issue, is that people tend to look at something and form an opinion very quickly. And before forming that, before thinking about it, they're ready to make a comment, become a professional on the matter, make accusations, and and I find it funny. And I think that if I don't think this might ever happen, honestly, but I think that if people really, especially with the internet, and I like your little speech you did at the beginning, it's like not everything you see on the internet is exactly how it comes. Not everything you see in media is exactly how it comes, and it's definitely you shouldn't be taking anything for advice when it comes to the internet and the media. But if you, for example, come across our deck and you see that, and that's your first thought, click on our website. Look at the donations that were made for victims across the country. Look at the about me. See how it took 2.5 years to create this project and what we were tackling and how we tackled it and how we successfully tackled it. Also look at we made a software based on the success of this deck and the analytical data that we were able to collect. We made a software called Aurora, and it's a criminal software that's used to catch criminals. And what this software does is it calculates a percentage of capability. So every human being is based off of different archetypes. And in astrology, we have different nodes, different degrees, different placements that can signal certain possibilities. It doesn't mean that that's going to happen. It's a possibility. It's a capability. And when you have a certain amount of these percentage capabilities, we can say that you're capable of committing murder. We can say that you're not capable of committing murder down to a percentage. That percentage has an 89% accuracy rate. And so what the software essentially does is if somebody's murdered or if somebody commits a crime and they have 50 suspects, you can use our software to put the suspect information in, and it'll give you a ranking of capability percentage. This person's 70%, 60%, 50%. So it triages. So it gives the detective a faster, not a faster, but it cuts down the time that the detective would have to spend investigating each individual suspect blindly, right? Now, the detective could have a hunch. Now, if the hunch is in the top three, I mean, that's great. Now the detective has his gut feeling and he has this percentage, and he could go off of that. And if it's wrong, he goes to the next person and then the next person. And the results that we've seen so far is the top three are usually end up being the person who gets convicted. Again, it's an 89% accuracy, and that's due to the fact that we hypothesize. Even though some cases we are pretty dang sure, like 99.9% sure, that a lot of people, which is no surprise, are convicted that didn't actually commit the crimes. There's also a lot of people who took blame for the crimes and didn't actually commit the crimes. There's also people who may have a spouse, especially like when we got to the cups area of tarot, that they might have taken the hit or the blame for a spouse that was actually committing the crimes or the murders.
First of all, those are wonderful philanthropic endeavors that your organization is conducting. So well done on that. We really thank you for that. There's much to explore here. I'm curious to explore more, first of all, the connection between these fields that you've referred to, tarot, astrology, and mathematics. What's the connection, and how do these equations work?
Everything is numbers in a sense. In my philosophy of how I view things, it's you can view reality in different ways. But for example, I have this glass of ginger ale here. This glass of ginger ale, if you used a piece of equipment, you can get the frequency that this glass of ginger ale is giving off, because every single thing, no matter what it is, has a frequency. Now, that frequency is a number. So it might be vibrating at 364,000. That's the number, right? Every letter in the alphabet has a number. Every planet has a number. Every tarot card has a number. All symbols have numbers. So when you understand that these are all numbers, you can make these calculations based on those numbers and these systems that have been around for a very long time. So, for example, let's talk astrology, because that's probably the most easily digestible. Now, everything that we discussed that I've used astrology before in what I've told you about is just a tip of the iceberg. Astrology is used by governments. Astrology is used by countries and nations. Everything is based on astrology. I've had projects where I've tried to use astrology for gambling, for example, right? Not because I like to gamble or I want to gamble or because I want to make money or whatever it is, just because it was an idea that I wanted to challenge to test the theory of astrology. And we did so. Astrology can be used for stock markets. I had a lot of clients in the past who would call me up that I was experimenting with on using astrology in the stock market, either to buy, to sell, but mainly it was people who wanted to sell stocks to individual people. And they would come to me and they'd be like, hey, guy Steve, he doesn't want to buy a stock from me. I said, all right, give me Steve's information. You put it in. I said, okay, this is Steve's chart. Call him on a Friday at the end of the month after 6 p.m. It's like, oh, we don't work after 6 p.m. I said, well, you're going to work after 6 p.m. on the Friday at the end of the month because he's going to take your call and he's going to make that sale. And about 9 out of 10 times, they usually do. You have your Kabbalah system, which breaks down each planet into a number. Then you have your Kabbalah system that also breaks down letters into numbers. So you could take your first name and do the numbers, add it all up, and then see what planet is associated with it. So it could be Mars. And you take your last name, it could be Jupiter. And then you add them both together, both of those numbers, and it could equal Uranus, right? So your first name and your last name together carries the association, the frequency of Uranus. Or maybe it's Jupiter. Maybe it carries the frequency of Jupiter. And Jupiter matches the frequency of X amount of items or X amount of things, right? So it has a lot to do with frequency, but at the end of the day, frequency is numbers, right? There's plenty of research going around today, just to put this in a little bit more of a scientific perspective, because I want to give multiple perspectives here. Cancer is, different types of cancer have different types of frequencies, and there's people who have a lot of success right now over the last 5-10 years, and hopefully we see this soon as a applicable thing to fight cancer, where they would find the actual frequency of the tumors and get the opposite frequency and then shoot that frequency with a very high quality stereo at the area where the tumors are, and it would make the tumors disappear, because you're combating it with the numbers that combat the number that it is. And even emotions have frequencies, right? Sadness has a certain frequency, it has a number to it, right? And you can see how these things influence people, right? If somebody's very sad around you, that frequency is going to affect you in some way, right?
I believe I understand. So in effect, does this mean that in the world, the numbers are not arbitrary, they relate to specific physical phenomena, and if we understand those physical phenomena and what outcomes are likely to relate to them according to probability, statistics, we can then use the numbers to calculate the likelihood of a different event and then use that to essentially inform our choices?
That, again, that's just a small part of it. And I'll give you a good example of that is, right, we just had Pluto come back into our transit, into our solar system, right? And the last time that happened, we had a really big war. Time before that, the Roman Empire fell. So us astrologers who pay attention to stuff, we knew that during this time we would be in another war and there'd be a great change, right? So every single time, for as far back as you could go in history, every time Pluto comes in, an empire completely changes. It either falls completely and a new one rises, or it changes completely. And the things that change during that time is the way people are social with each other, the way money is used, if money is used at all, or if it's a different type of currency, the rules, the entire construct really changes during those times. And for anybody who is also a skeptic like me, that's a fun exercise to do, is check out just Pluto. See every time Pluto comes in, he comes here, and then look at history, and it'll tell you. So, and I want to be careful that we don't say it doesn't predict the future, because that's not what it's doing. It's not predicting the future. And that's an easy trap to fall into, is to say like, oh, this is predicting the future or predicting an outcome. No, it's just telling you that there's a capability percentage of that happening during that time. It doesn't mean it will happen, although it usually does. But it's very important that I say it doesn't predict it and it doesn't tell the future, because those are two things that I feel, even though I'm still challenging that idea, I feel I can't confidently say. And a lot of people or tarot readers might say, oh, we're predicting your future, we're doing this. I disagree with that. And I'm still challenging that idea.
So in effect, could we say that even if we don't know what the connection is between one event and another event, the fact that we know that there's a connection means that it can still inform our understanding of the world. So it's more about present understanding and not about prediction.
Yes, that's actually a much better way of putting it. It's about understanding, and not just world events either. You can understand a lot about yourself. It could be a really good tool to recognize things in ourselves, what they like to call shadow work in a lot of spiritual circles and tarot circles and whatnot. But again, tarot is not spiritual. It can be used in spiritual practices, but it is not spiritual. It's just a tool. And you could check out your own chart, and you could say, and you read a couple of things, and you're like, wow, I've really been avoiding that. I should probably work on that. I've really been unsocial, and and this planet over here at this degree is telling me that, hey, you're prone to being unsocial at this time. And maybe now that I'm aware of this, I can make the changes, if I want to make the changes, to do that. Or, hey, you've been unreasonable, and you've been really closed-minded. Perhaps exercise and practice not being so closed-minded and being more reasonable. And these are the things that help us grow as humans, right? And in a lot of spiritual circles, they talk about, us being here on Earth as education and learning and all that stuff. And you could say that that's almost like a textbook, or like a cheat code to really understanding the things that you're avoiding, which is one of the main things that we tackled with the first tarot deck. And it's truly is astonishing, because even to this day, I still see comments on social media, and it's like, I don't laugh actually, but I do laugh in my head, because it's like, I was like, you don't even realize the comment that you made is literally proving the point of what we're trying to teach, and you don't even know it.
I'd like to look at the differences between tarot, mathematics, and the associated practices, and spirituality, because spirituality effectively refers to the metaphysical phenomena that exist outside of the physical world, and it's often promoted or practiced with the supposition that you can't obtain personal wellness from wealth or from status or from what happens in the physical world. You have to search for higher purpose and energy, effectively. But then there are also arguments that suggest that the physical world and the metaphysical world are actually one and the same. And I've spoken to a number of spiritualists who actually don't argue against science or argue against any type of practice that seeks to understand the world, but they frame these different types of practices, spiritual and non-spiritual, as just different perspectives on exactly the same phenomenon. And a lot of spiritualists also do refer to energy as well, which involves frequencies which have numbers objectively. So I'm wondering, is there a way to reconcile the two? Would you say that there's a distinct difference between spirituality and the practices that you're describing?
Sure, I would probably have to agree that, yeah, they all kind of are the same. I mean, everything's really connected, and they all are part of the same systems. A way that I like to differentiate is magic and magic. All right, so magic with a C is illusions, science, right? Anything in that realm, and there's a lot of things in that realm. And then magic with a K is more of like the metaphysical side of things. And they're both effectively talking about the same thing, but in different ways. What I have come to find is that the magic with a C is a little bit behind, or I mean, realistically, magic with a K has been around way longer than magic with a C, right? So like science, metaphysics in that realm, spirituality has been around way longer than science and such, right? But science and all that stuff takes longer, right? Even in the practice of like therapy or psychology, there are now therapists and psychologists who are actively using astrology and tarot in their work, and the results that we're seeing come back are nothing short of amazing. I mean, the time that's spent with a patient, over the course of 5-7 years, the success or the progress that's being made earlier on in the 1 to 2 year mark is outpacing that, right? And that's controversial because in certain places, a therapist or psychologist who is using those practices, they could get in trouble, right? If more people, like we spoke about before, had that skeptic mind and challenged these ideas, they might find a useful tool or two. And if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. If it does, great. But everything from that realm and this realm are effectively the same. And, I don't like using those word labels as much. Like, of course, we need to because we need to have a conversation, right? But spirituality, metaphysics, because it's such a broad spectrum, and so many things get grouped into it. The same thing with occult, right? Or the same thing with tarot or astrology. So much things get grouped into it that perhaps we've picked up throughout life that our brain is making connections to that might not necessarily actually fall under that umbrella or might not actually be correct or incorrect or whatever the situation is. I look at words and letters as, magic with a K, right? Whereas other people might say it's magic with a C. It means magic with a K because, words are very powerful. And just by speaking a word, you can effectively completely change the thought structure in somebody's brain, right? A simple word, just because of the connections that are associated with that word. And when it's said and heard, it automatically hits all of those things, and that person's automatically talking, right? Which would be illusion and manipulation, which a lot of politicians use. If you notice how politicians speak, they use very selective words, and they use those words specifically because they know that those hit certain things in the brain and that they could be talking a whole lot of nonsense, but as long as they hit those words repetitively over the course of the 20 minutes that they're talking, you might not have any idea what they said, but you're going to think that, oh, that guy's great. And that's words.
And that is absolutely the case, that it's strongly agreed that we do create connections, neurological connections between different ideas, different pieces of information in the brain, an endless number of them. And using certain words, certain symbols, or certain approaches to communication very much can change the way we think and very much can convince people of ideas that don't hold a lot of weight, but they appeal to people's existing connections and people's desires and emotions in ways that can be quite frightening in the ways that they can manipulate. So very much the case that happens. Now, I'm fascinated if one of your latest tarot projects regarding the controversy of artificial intelligence. Can you give us a short preview into how you might practice that as a means of understanding?
Sure. Well, the project, what we did was I partnered with a nuclear computer scientist who works for the government, so we kept his name out of the project files, but he was a big part of it. And what we did was we created a supercomputer on a Threadripper. If anybody's in tech, they know what a Threadripper is. And effectively, when you get a computer like that, it's completely blank. So when it shows up at your door and you put everything together, the computer effectively does nothing because you have to program the computer. And how we programmed the computer is we gave it a bunch of traits, like reasoning and pattern recognition and stuff like that. And we educated it with all the access of verified history for human beings. So anything that's verified through a respected college or a history book or anything, we let it digest all of that information. The second thing we did is we gave it all access to news media. Right? Anything in the media, anything in the news, newspapers, going back as far as we could go back. Then we educated it on everything in the quote-unquote occult, numerology, tarot, astrology, everything. And we also give it access to social media. That's another thing that we did, which kind of caused a bunch of issues, but we did do that. And after this was all said and done, we started asking questions. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask was, in the tarot, the magician card right now reflects on society and means this, that, and the third based on society now. 100 years ago, when the magician card was created, it didn't change the meaning, but society was different. So the answers were a little bit different. So the meanings are kind of still the same, but they're different because of society, right? So I said, hey, 100 years from now, how do you think that meaning is going to change? Based upon everything you know in our history and everything, how we behave through media and social media and all that. What do you think? And it would give us these answers. And the answers were really hard to argue with. They were pretty plausible, right? They were plausible based upon how the world is now, the way our past was, and in the direction that we were going. So from there, then we would illustrate each card based upon what it told us. So we would draw out the card and include all of the proper symbolism to reflect what it thinks for the future. One of the other really big things that I wanted to do, because again, this project is tackling the problem that everybody thinks that AI is either bad or good. And that's not my argument. It's irrelevant to me. It's here and it's not going anywhere, and it is what it is, right? My problem that I wanted to tackle is I see a lot of really good artists and really good musicians and so on and so forth. And you look at their pages and their creations and these beautiful works, and you see the comments, and it's like AI, 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 and it's not AI. This guy created that, and you're telling him it's AI. And now you have 100,000 people that are trying to shut down this artist who is doing the very thing that you're trying to promote. You're saying it's AI because you want to promote real artists, but yet you're commenting AI on a real artist. And I see this every day at such a mass scale. And it goes back to what we said before. People look at something, they form an opinion, they don't click on the profile, they don't look at his work. Instantly, opinion. Right? And that could be devastating for a lot of people. So when we did illustrate the artwork, the first iteration was more of a realism iteration. And we got about a quarter of the way through, and I had this idea. I said, let's draw this to look like it might have been created by AI, because I want people to comment that it's AI on here and then find out. Maybe only 1 out of 10 will. But I want them to find out and maybe think twice the next time they do something like that.
It's incredible that even though people are making the complaint that artificial intelligence is, so to speak, taking over the world, what they don't realize is that it's taking over them because it's convinced them that something that isn't AI, something that they themselves want to see more of, is in fact AI, and it's making them overly cynical. So it is taking over people's minds, but in different ways to what they are postulating. They're seeing it as AI doing people's jobs for them, but it's taking over their minds by making them too cynical to recognize something that they actually want. As a counsellor, I receive referrals from others, and I also like to help my audience become aware of resources and other providers which may be beneficial, as well as help other individuals and organisations gain exposure. That's why I host the Your Listener Partner Network, and I'd like to thank my partners for their support. I'd like to introduce Kay Crow of the Love Life Counsellor. Kay Crow provides online relationship counselling across Australia for singles, individuals and couples wanting to overcome barriers to connection, resolve conflict, repair attachment and build healthy relationships. With 8 years worth of experience in mental health, Kay has seen how relationship difficulties can impact well-being. She helps clients explore patterns, attachment styles and emotional habits to create meaningful, fulfilling connections through a nurturing and inclusive approach. Find the Love Life Counsellor at www.thelovelifecounsellor.com.au. I'm wondering if we could get a concrete example from that magician card that you just mentioned. I'm wondering, can you describe to us what is the magician card? What does it have in it? And what did it mean 100 years ago?
The magician is the archetype of will made manifest. By depicting him as a reality hacker wielding military-grade nanites, the image literalizes the magician's classical tools into technological equivalents. His attempt to overwrite physical reality with a virtual vision exposes the shadow side of mastery, power without ethical grounding, the vaporizing air in the image, the instability of unchecked creation. Here, the magician is no longer a conduit between worlds. He attempts to collapse them into one, illustrating the danger of confusing capability with wisdom. So, in the descriptions here, we reference the old meanings, right? So, the hypothesis was that the magician card in the future would be confusing, people would be confusing capability with wisdom, which is very loud of a statement even now, because there's a lot of people who confuse capability with wisdom, and we could see that growing in a scale. So when I read that, I understood it as like, okay, I could see that now, and I could see how it's moving up, and I could see how with more technology, the capability, I guess, ego gets really high, but you have this capability with no wisdom. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like a tornado, right? Tornado's got all this power, but it doesn't know where to go. It kind of just goes, right? Which is the shadow side, right? Because the positive side of somebody who has worked through the moral lesson of the magician card would be extreme capability, but with proper wisdom attached to it. Whereas here we're showing the opposite, which is so much capability and not enough wisdom.
So this particular card, it describes in effect a type of person, a person who has great power or great capability, intelligence, so to speak, a great amount of knowledge about a particular subject or range of subjects, but they haven't yet done the work to develop the judgment to use them in a way that is the most constructive. And so there's potential for it to be misused or used in a way that's not optimal. So effectively, does the card provide you with insight into a phenomenon that you can then use as a means of reflecting on what's happening in the world?
Sure, yeah. And it's not necessarily reflective of a person, it's reflective of an aspect of a person. So we all may have this aspect in different ways. This aspect can be shown in your hobby for cooking, your hobby for drawing. It can be in so many different aspects. And it's funny is I view a lot of politicians almost like magicians, right? Because they have this exponential capability because of the position they're in, and they may not necessarily have the wisdom. So, there's many different ways to use tarot cards, but in the question that you asked, let's just say, somebody pulled this card, right? And they're asking about themselves. The reflection would be to perhaps work on your wisdom based upon what your capabilities are and these outlets that you have, right? It may be, if it's a reading for somebody else and they ask about, a business or something like that, and you pull the card and it's like, oh, you have everything you need. You just need to have the knowledge. And then maybe my advice might be, hey, just go out and do it. Make mistakes. Learn from your mistakes, right? Take a class, take a course, read a book. You have everything you need already. You just need the knowledge and the wisdom. And sometimes wisdom only comes by trying and doing, right? So there's only so much you could learn from a book. And there's a lot of things in the world that are like this, especially, there's certain people that could only learn this way, where you have to learn from doing and experiencing rather than being told or reading.
So effectively, practices such as tarot are not intended to be definitive, they're intended to be exploratory. So, in a manner of speaking, even though there could be a number of aspects of a person's life on which they could be working to improve themselves, because any of us could improve ourselves or be focusing on something at a given time, these are very carefully selected prompts, effectively, to consider specific aspects of your life or specific aspects of the world. And they're carefully crafted, not based on any arbitrary rules, but based on actual events that have happened in the world or actual progressions that have occurred throughout history. So they're effectively reminders that there are certain things that we should think about in order to optimize ourselves or the world in some way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, there's many different ways to use them. That's definitely one of them. It's definitely one of them. You know, people could ask about, hey, I have this business, and just wondering when is it going to work out? And you could pull a card on that, and that card might be associated with a certain period of the year. Maybe it's during Taurus season, right? And you could say Taurus season, right? Then they might have a follow-up question like, hey, what is it that I need to know? What is it that I need to do? What is it that I'm ignoring that I need to work on? And then they pull the Magician card, and that would be their answer. But yeah, there's so many different ways to use it and different questions that can be asked. One of the things that I will share, because again, like I said, I was a skeptic getting into it. And when I started doing readings more and more often, I found that people have this weird little quirk or behavior. And I think that quirk or behavior comes from the same skepticism that I have. Because somebody will ask a question and they'll get the answer, but they'll ask the same exact question phrased slightly differently. And they'll get the same answer, sometimes 3-4 times in a row. And the odds of that are pretty high. And to see that with multiple people across, years of doing this is definitely something that has kind of kept the skepticism in its place, so to speak.
I'm wondering, when you pull a card, what's the relationship between the drawing of the card and the answer that you get? Is it the postulation that when you draw the card, that it was drawn in that order for a particular reason, or is it more that whatever card you happen to draw is the one you should focus on? What's the connection between the two?
Sure. So when you have a tarot deck, it's 78 cards. You shuffle them up, you split the deck. The person asks the question, you flip the card. That would be the answer. It's up to the person like me who's doing the reading to iterate the symbols and the morals and the words that are associated with that card, right? Now, I could pull another card, and I could pull another card. I could pull 3 cards on the same question if I wanted to, and that's kind of up to me. There are some people who follow like quote unquote rules where, oh, you have to pull 3 cards for this one question, or no, you have to pull 5 or 6 cards, or no, you can only pull 1. I don't really do that. If there is people that do that and it works for them, that's not something that I do. If I feel necessary, like even me personally, I need further clarification on this person's question, I might pull another card, and that next card will clarify even further.
That's interesting. I'm curious, are you able to reflect on what the relationship is then between what the card says and the physics of, or the reality of how the world works? Because I'm wondering, if a person asks a question and we draw a card and that card is what we believe gives the answer, or it gives the insight or the understanding that we're after, I'm wondering, how is it that we know that specific card that we happen to draw is relevant to the person's situation? Is it that it's not meant to be definitive, it's just meant to be a reminder or a prompt, or is there a way of knowing that that's actually specifically relevant to what the person has asked?
Sure. Well, that's the skepticism, right? And the only way to answer that question truthfully, in a way that you can understand, is to try it out. Because even I can't put words to describe an answer for you for that, because even I still don't No, right? Is it 100% the answer? Maybe, maybe not. Does it actually, when I follow through with a lot of these things, what's the success rate on whether that answer was correct as far as how we understand it and how I'm viewing it? 100%. Could they have gotten another answer and that still be correct? Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. It's not really, again, it's really not something that you can explain with words, and that's why I started practicing it, right? Because I could read all the books I want, I could see all the tarot readers I want. I'm not, and this is true because I never actually understood it until I actually did it, right? And then there's still aspects of it that even I don't understand, and I've been doing it for 15 years. You know, I've gotten to the point where I could actually do this practice without needing the cards as much as when I was in the beginning, right? I could talk to somebody, get their name and their birthday, and I could just do the astrology aspect of it, which is just basically the cards. The cards is the easier way, right? But whether we know that that's really the answer, I don't think we'll ever know. But it seems to be working pretty well.
I'd like to draw a parallel there between different belief systems and different systems of understanding the world. And this is something that I constantly refer to in my work. I'm constantly encouraging people to reflect on this, because what we don't often realize is that there is more to life than just physical connections between events and physical connections between phenomena. And if we look at, say, the evidence, certain, I haven't read every study on this in the world, but if you look at certain evidence regarding spirituality, religion, different culture, effectively what the evidence says, the most reasonable way to interpret it, is that what something specifically causes to happen is actually sometimes less important than what you do with it. And so, for example, certain studies demonstrate that people who are religious, have very strong religious beliefs, actually measure high on measures of well-being compared to similar people who don't have those same beliefs. That evidence doesn't confirm without any doubt that God exists or doesn't exist. It doesn't confirm that the ideas in that religion are necessarily literally true or not. But what it does give insight into is the fact that when you practice a religion, you are stimulating your mind in such a manner as to enact things that are objectively good for you. And so it could be said that when you draw a tarot reading, whether the depiction or the postulation from the card is literally a physical, can literally explain physical connection between two events or not, isn't necessarily demonstrable. But what it does do is it stimulates your mind to think about things that we eventually need to think about if we are to progress or to grow ourselves. And so even though you could look at all 78 of those cards and find something in each of them that could potentially be worth you exploring further and improving in your own life or reflecting on, the fact that you are thinking and you are reflecting deeply is probably what's happening. It's not that there's a physical change that's happening as a result of drawing the card. It's that the drawing of the card and the fact that you have devoted yourself to the process means that your mind is already ready to accept a challenge, effectively, a challenge of reflection and a challenge of exploration. And if you are ready to accept that and then you actively do it, it's actually the person who's engaged in the process that's created the change, and the card has been the catalyst for it. It's been the initiator. So I think it's an important lesson for us to learn that our minds have so much capability, and there's so much capability in the world and in phenomena that we don't necessarily yet understand, but it's still powerful to harness, and harnessing your mind is such a powerful thing to do, and it can make a big difference to things, even if we don't necessarily understand the physical cause of it. You've given wonderful insight that often achieving a given outcome takes more than just a direct or literal path of progress from A to B. It takes something to stimulate and something to initiate the process. And even, again, just like with anything, traditional cultures, religions, different practices, often a lot of traditions have been crafted And the people who crafted them may not have necessarily realized what the physical connection was between the effects, but they knew they were onto something. They knew that they had something that was special and stimulating.
But that's also comes with, warning too, right? Because if you lean too much on this as a guide, I think personally, I think that could be a little bit of a problem, right? Because like you said, the mind is very powerful, and that's why I always tell people, like, this is a tool. It's not giving you the energy. Like, everything is coming from your mind. It's coming from you. And it's funny because we also mentioned the second project with AI, and there's a lot of people who do that with AI. Is they start out using it as a guide, and they start using it a little bit too much. And now we have actual words for this, which is artificial intelligence psychosis, or a couple of other different types of terms. And I actually have a really good friend who got that, and we noticed it was happening. We would ask him to come out for a beer and a burger, and he would actually ask ChatGPT if he should go out for beer and a burger. And there are a lot of people that do that with tarot too. And I think that there's a fine line and a healthy line that should be respected. Useful as a tool, but not a crutch.
Absolutely. It's actually it can be frightening how we might think we're in complete control and are absolutely 100% self-aware, but without realizing that sometimes external events can influence us without us even realizing what the influence is. And the example that you gave just before of people accusing actual artists of using AI-generated content is an example of that. We may think it's just a misguided comment, but we don't think about how it's actually AI having an effect that was completely unintended, and that even these people completely don't realize is having on them. I'd like to thank you for being on the program today, because I've learned so much about these different practices that I didn't even realize, and I really appreciate what insight this provides to our audience, and also what insight it provides to the world in general, that there are different ways to look at a situation and potentially reach the outcome that is most constructive. And sometimes all it takes is lateral thinking, being able to integrate different ideas and different approaches. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a wonderful conversation. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And to our audience, thank you to everybody for joining us today. As per usual, if you have concerns about yourself or someone else, please seek advice from a professional or somebody else that you trust. If you're seeking counselling from me in Australia, you can find my contact details in the description of this episode, and I very much encourage you to look at what Christian and Courage Over Comfort have to offer. Their links will be in the description of this episode. If you have feedback on the program, please feel free to write to me. I'd love to hear from my audience. And until next time, everybody, take care.